We are the Widbusters and we are trying to make finance easy for everyone. I am Utkarsh and I am joined by my friends Aman
Hello guys, my name is Aman.
and Tarin.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarin.
This is episode 1 and we hope you enjoy our journey. बताऊं जैसे कि मैं उत्कर्ष हूँ और मैंने पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन किया हुआ है, उसके जस्ट बाद वहाँ पे जो हम लोग को आइडिया लगे उसके हिसाब से हम लोगों ने अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट शुरू किए हैं। मेरी टोटल जो इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट की हिस्ट्री है उसमें मेरे पोर्टफोलियो का मैं 20% लूज कर चुका हूँ करंट डेट में, और उसके बाद मैंने डेट इक्विपमेंट्स में रिसर्च करना शुरू किया। डेट इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स मेनली होते हैं जैसे तुम्हारा एफडी है, दैट्स वन ऑफ द इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स। इनमें क्या होता है कि दे आर लोअर रिस्क एंड दे हैव अ लोअर रिटर्न कॉन्सिक्वेंटली, बट जब मैं रिसर्च कर रहा था उस बेसिस पे मुझे लिक्विड फंड्स के बारे में पता चला और उनको मैंने कंपेयर किया डेट फंड्स में, लिक्विड डेट फंड के अगेंस्ट, और उसी से आइडिया आया इस तरह का पॉडकास्ट बनाने का कि और लोगों को इस बारे में पता होना चाहिए। इट्स नॉट अ वन टू वन कंपैरिजन कि दिस इज बेटर देन दिस, दोनों के अपने अपने प्रोज एंड कॉन्स हैं।
सो उत्कर्षण में बेसिकली हम सेम बैच से हैं, बट बैकग्राउंड मैं लास्ट 3 साल से बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री में हूँ, मोस्टली स्ट्रेटेजी और क्रेडिट रोल में, और इन्वेस्टमेंट भी मैंने अराउंड 1 साल पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन स्टार्ट किया था। तो मेरा भी बहुत ही मिक्स्ड रहा है। शुरू में काफी थोड़ा डैब किया नॉर्मल इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में, थोड़ा ट्रेडिंग में, थोड़ा म्यूचुअल फंड्स में, एंड नॉलेज लिमिटेड थी। थोड़ा फ्रेंड्स का सपोर्ट, थोड़ा फ्रेंड्स से डिस्कशन होता था, थोड़ा खुद का रिसर्च, बट लॉसेस काफी देखने को मिले। फिर अराउंड पास्ट 1.5 years पहले स्टार्टेड इन्वेस्टिंग इन सम एफडीज, थोड़ा सिक्योर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में, एंड ओवर टाइम ऑब्वियसली इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में भी थोड़ा अपना रिटर्न्स बेटर हुए। आई एम टॉकिंग बिफोर प्री कोविड टाइम्स ऑब्वियसली।
फिर सब लूज कर दिया इसने।
उसके बाद के पोर्टफोलियो की बात नहीं करते। बट हाँ, ओवर टाइम मोस्टली आई इन्वेस्टेड इन एफडी। डेट फंड्स का मुझे इतना आइडिया नहीं था, बट व्हाइल डिस्कसिंग विद my colleagues, obviously among our friends, I realized कि debt liquid funds are also another alternative, and मुझे personally इतना knowledge है, मेरा बहुत limited investment है उसमें। तो in a way इस podcast से हम आपस में को discuss करेंगे ही, plus you know overall we'll just figure out some pros and cons of different types of investments, and hopefully it can help others take better investment decisions.
Okay, so I'll go. My name is Tarin, also from the same batch as Utkarsh and Aman. We are all engineer MBAs, just so you know, the usual path. I am not from a banking background originally. I was in e-commerce pehle, and now I am into an NBFC. Investing journey, I also started 1 year post MBA back in 2018. My portfolio is around 66% equity, 33% debt. And I have zero money in FD. I don't believe in FD. I like to have more tax efficient instruments. So my aim is always how to reduce tax as much as possible, because that is an unnecessary friction into your investment returns. Debt में मेरा पूरा का पूरा investment is in liquid funds. And I am also planning to diversify further into debt, into gilt funds. So liquid funds I use as an alternative to savings account as well as an FD right now. So I don't keep any money in savings account. Pura ka pura I sweep into liquid funds. And equity portfolio mein, there is a 50-50 split between mutual funds and my own portfolio. Mutual funds have done quite well over the last 2.5 years. My own portfolio, I have booked around 5 to 6% losses. Uske baad, it is right now just 2% above Nifty, basically in the returns over the last 2.5 years. So very below average performance, but hopefully
much above average in this conference.
No. So basically, I follow a value investing approach. So I'm ready to wait for the next 10 years if that is what it takes for me to generate returns.
तो हम तीनों में टीवी सबसे बड़ा स्टार इन्वेस्टर निकला।
नहीं सारे लॉसेस अनबुक्ड है, सिर्फ इसलिए मैं उनको बोल रहा हूँ।
I think you don't know how many R and book losses are.
हाँ तो जैसे
Still
नारायण
whenever we have booked.
हाँ तो वही मैंने बुक अभी कुछ 5-6% किया है, बाकी लॉसेस आई एम होपिंग अपने आप रिकवर हो जाएंगे.
तो द थिंग इज हम तीनों के इंट्रो में डेट और इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के बारे में काफी आ रहा था. इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट मेरे हिसाब से सब लोग समझते हैं, शेयर्स के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, बट शेयर्स और म्यूचुअल फंड्स के. बट एक बार डेट फंड्स के बारे में भी अगर कोई बताना चाहे तो वो बता सकता है कि डेट कैसे सेविंग्स होती है.
Okay, so I'll try to give a basic explanation. Debt funds are basically, I'll talk about debt mutual funds. वो लोग basically क्या करते हैं? They pool money from investors like us, like you and I, and they invest that money into debt securities, which is nothing but a debt security is a way a company can raise money from the market in the form of a loan. तो वो पैसा एक म्यूचुअल फंड मैनेजर आपसे लेगा और उस कंपनी को देगा एज अ लोन. इन रिटर्न द कंपनी विल पे इंटरेस्ट ऑन दैट लोन. दैट इंटरेस्ट विल जनरेट और रिटर्न्स. दैट इज हाउ एनी लोन वर्क्स. दैट इज आल्सो हाउ डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स वर्क. अब इसमें भी कई तरह के होते हैं डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स. वील लुक एट प्राइमरीली 3 कैटेगरीज. वन इज नॉर्मल डेट फंड्स who can invest in corporate debt, which means where private companies are raising money through you, or government debt, because state and central governments also raise money by issuing bonds, right? Then there is guild funds, which is guild funds invest only and only in government bonds, central and state government both. And then there are liquid funds, which invest in very short term bonds. So अगर आप किसी से लोन ले रहे हो, उस लोन का repayment period could be as short as 60 days and as long as 30, 40, 60 years also. So liquid funds basically invest in debts which are as short as 60 to 90 days, on an average 90 days. So this is what my understanding is of debt funds, if anybody wants to add to it.
No, I think
I think that is fine. But I think we should discuss mainly like what differentiates them from an investment compared to FD.
Yeah,
so
I think
and also the kind of returns that they offer.
Just on a side note, debt funds, as TV said about the mutual funds, other debt funds in your personal investments are like PPF and your say any
FD.
loan, FD, savings. Even savings are considered as your debt fund, instruments. So like, just a sidetrack. Okay, let's get to the main topic.
One minute, just for everybody's understanding, can one of you explain how FD and PPF are also like debt funds? Because it doesn't strike people naturally. It's also a kind of debt that you give to a bank. So if Aman or Utkarsh, one of you can explain why we call these also as kind of a debt instrument, FD and PPF or savings
PPF,
account.
Utkarsh, you want to take? I'll then take up FD.
No, give a general
explanation. It's both on the same lines. It's just like you are giving a loan to the government or to the bank. You can understand in that way, and they are giving you payments with an interest on that. So that's how they work.
Yeah. So basically, any deposit that you make to the bank, it's basically a debt for the bank. It's a liability for the bank. And similarly, PPF is a liability for the government, which they need to pay in the future. So why do banks? So banks generally, like to mostly raise their deposits through investments through current and savings account, which offer lower returns to investors. FDs generally, you might have heard of terms like CASA ratio, bank a certain CASA ratio. Generally, banks usually like to have a high number of their deposits through current and savings accounts where they have to give a lower interest rate. When people invest through FDs or other deposits, then generally banks need to provide a higher interest rate to them. So that is also another way of banks for raising deposits, and which is obviously how banking essentially works.
Right. So basically, so FD, PPF, debt funds are all comparable. They all belong to the same category, which is what was important to understand. So we can move ahead now.
The basic characteristic of these entire all these instruments is that they are low risk and low return, as opposed to say markets, right? Equity, where you have to equity investment, which are high risk and high return. So like what we are comparing are two different debt instruments that are available to each of us. For example, that's the FD and the liquid funds.
So I think we should as a main thing we should discuss is currently what if there is risk involved in investing in debt mutual, if there is any. So as a investor, I know when I'm investing in FD, I don't any risk. Only the risk I have is the bank's liquidity position. And if there is a very serious situation, if the deposits of the investor are in jeopardy, which has happened
But
in some
very
cases,
rarely, na?
very
Very
rarely
rarely.
it happen, but it can happen. But let's neglect that. Mostly, it is 100% risk free,
Yeah.
and you get a fixed return from ranging from, let's say, 5% to 7%, depending on the various banks or NBFC which offer. So TB, can you, yeah, so TB, can you tell, like, if I am an investor, new investor, what kind of risks I need to see for a debt mutual fund, or if there are any?
मेरे को इस बार रिस्क लेने का ही नहीं है, बिल्कुल रिस्क नहीं लेने.
No, so debt mutual funds also have risk because it is a loan you are giving to somebody.
Yeah.
There's always a risk that the person will not be able to pay back the loan. So even let's say you give a loan to somebody for a 10-year period, which means it's a bond issued for a 10-year period, and the person is able to make interest payments, but those interest payments will amount to nothing if he is not able to pay the principal back. So the major risk that these debt funds run is the risk of default, where corporate, state or central governments will never default because they have the power to print money, basically. So they are extremely safe, but corporates can always default on their debts. We have seen in the cases in the last 1 or 2 years with INFS, with Indiabulls, these people have defaulted on their bonds. A lot of funds had to take haircuts. So that is one of the major risk. So this is this risk. We'll come to the point later how to mitigate this risk. But this is one major risk. Second risk is risk of low returns or credit risk or interest risk, basically, because debt funds also fluctuate with the returns of debt funds also fluctuate with the interest rates currently in the economy. I think we should come to this point later. Before we explain, we should first talk about how interest rates work and how bond yields and bond prices work with interest rates.
A bit sidetracked on here, but just a note on that. So the interest rate would affect both FD as well as the liquid.
Yeah, both.
So, yeah, it would affect.
So
FD,
for example,
so I have a doubt here. If one of you can clarify, FD ka interest rate is floating or fixed?
So FD ka interest rate is always fixed. It's what you got at the time of.
When are you invested at time of investing FD?
So I think this will come up a lot during our discussion. One of the advantage of liquid fund is that their ability to pivot with the market conditions. If interest rates are changing in some segment or in some security, they can get rid of their low interest securities and buy a better one that will help the customers, right? So like I think we'll come to that later. But first of all, I think we should lay down what a liquid fund actually is, because I believe everybody is everybody understands. Like, so if anyone wants to take up liquid funds, like I'll just give a basic definition that I wrote up. Liquid fund is a debt fund which invests in fixed securities like commercial papers, treasury bills, and government securities. So like I think this has come up a lot, but all three of these instruments are so secure that they'll only fail potentially when the government fails. So if a government is not able to pay back these securities, only then this will become null and void, and hence they have not exactly FD level, but they have similar level of security when you are comparing them to FD.
Not just government, liquid funds also invest in corporate funds. But why they are safe is because these are very short-term loans, loans. So when investing or when buying a commercial paper of 60 to 90 days, a fund manager can actually see what is the liquidity position of a company. And he can say with a fair confidence that in the next 2 or 3 months, company ka halat itna bura nahi ho jayega, paisa pay na kar paye. Which is something which you cannot see in a 5 to 10 year horizon.
Okay, but what about, we can discuss if, let's say, there was a recent default in the Franklin Templeton debt fund.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much background about it, but if PB or someone, Utkarsh, can elaborate that.
Utkarsh, you have context about that?
So I didn't read about in the sense that it was something which actually defaulted. So that
No,
kind
I
of
think it was they
how
wrote down
common,
Vodafone Idea debt, right?
No. I get what Aman is
I'm
trying to
saying
say.
how common is that kind of a default in a debt mutual fund if you are talking about a context. If
So even my sister had invested in that fund, and
yeah.
she lost a fair deal of money.
Hmm.
They're trying to give her back a portion
So
of the.
obviously investors would be wary of these recent events.
Yes.
Hmm.
So fund managers, I believe, are like that might have been a problem of fund manager, as Shibi mentioned. He might have reached out to a riskier company for higher returns,
Yeah,
and that company might have collapsed in the time frame 60 to 90 days that was given.
right.
Yeah,
So
that
wasn't it? I believe that was the default from a future group or
I
the
think Future or Vodafone. No, not Vodafone. I think Future Group with
I
Shayad.
think it was future group, right?
We'll have
might be.
to
I'm not sure
check.
on that.
We'll check and maybe
Yeah.
post it.
I will circle
But
back in the next video if we are able to find.
but I want to add up on a very good point which Utkarsh mentioned right now. So the point where he said that a fund manager would have taken a riskier loan for higher returns. So always remember this, that if a debt mutual fund is selling itself as a very high returns fund, it means it is inherently very, very risky. Because a government, or no, not a government, a company which is a very financially healthy company will never take loan at a very, very high interest rate. It will always have the power to negotiate a lower interest
Yeah.
rate.
I think that is true for even to an extent for FDs. If you're getting an FD at a very high interest rate, it would generally be from a bank which has very low deposits or in
Hmm.
or NBFC which is just starting out.
For
So
Right.
example,
yeah, so
as
big banks like SBI or ICICI, they would have quite low FD and saving interest rates. But
Yeah.
some private banks that are just starting, but which have relatively new, they would probably offer a higher return in FD simply because they can't raise deposits at a lower rate.
So, for
And
example, on today, 11th October 2020, SBI's FD rate is 5% and below. Like,
yeah,
since it's the safest instrument that you can find in India, and that's the FD rate that they are currently offering. Like, gone are the days of 9-10% of FD rates. Like,
Yeah.
we live in a 4 and 5% interest rate. Even the savings rate are down to 3.5%, right?
Yeah. Repo rate as of today is 4%. Just FYI. Hmm.
So I think we're moving towards a US-based economy where the interest rates are just 1%, or in case of Japan, where they're negative.
Hmm.
So
Right. So good point. I mean, but banks, at least you have some safety because it's a bank. Government will not let it fail so easily.
yeah.
In case of a corporate, if it shuts down tomorrow, nobody cares. In
So I
most
was
of
just giving an example that if there is a high interest rate involved, generally the safety of that instrument would be lower
yes,
if the interest rate is higher.
Hmm.
That happens on any like when a bank offers a client loan. So if the client has a weak credit profile, the bank will offer at a very high interest rate,
Yeah.
or it has a weak security. So the same thing is situation is here also. When you are giving a loan to a fund or a company, if it's a risk investment, you will give it a high interest rate.
Correct. You will charge a premium for the
You
risk
will
you
have
are
a premium
taking.
for the risk.
okay. Let's start the discussion on
One
that.
more thing. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
just to add on to this point. So here comes the inherent thesis behind why you should invest in a debt fund. Okay, a debt fund investment should never be for returns. There should be some return weightage, but the primary reason behind investing in debt fund is to conserve and protect your money. That should be the primary reason, along with generating some returns. It's not like you should compromise on returns completely, but the most important point is wealth preservation and trying to extract a little bit more return than your bank will give you, but
So
never run behind absolute returns. In case of debt funds, that's very, very risky, riskier
so
than equity actually, because the whole money can go away.
So that's why I believe that when you're selecting a debt fund, you should identify where they are investing. For example, if they're
Hmm.
investing only in government, state and central government treasury bills, then
Hmm.
in that case they are extremely safe, right?
Yeah.
Their returns would no doubt be lower, but they most likely 99.99% times they won't fail.
Yeah, your money won't go away anywhere, so your money will be safe at least.
So what I was trying to compare here was these two scenarios.
Hmm.
Uh, liquid fund that invests only in treasury bills that has a lower return compared to the normal mutual funds that's 12% that we see in the market, it will give only 5% returns, right? Against this FD, which is also currently giving 5% returns. So in this scenario where both of the instruments are giving 5%, why should you be choosing liquid funds in our understanding over FD?
Utkarsh, can you give a rough range of, let's say, past 3 to 5 year returns of these three kind of funds: liquid fund, gilt fund, and corporate debt funds?
So like all the interest rates, FD rates have been declining over the last 1 year. So for example, as you said, the corporate funds have a interest rate on the range of 8%. Like the liquid funds, even the which are heavily invested in corporate bonds, are giving a return of 7 to 9%. The ones who are spending in mostly in treasury bills are giving a return of around 5%, a bit lower as well if they are only involved in 91-day treasury bonds that are the safest ones provided by the government. And the third one, I'm not really sure about the gilt
No,
bonds.
so I'll tell then in that case. So basically, liquid funds usually have given returns in a range of 5 to 6%. They even go to 7% also, depending on how the interest rates are in the market.
This is what horizon are you talking?
Five over a 5 year period. So I always
Yeah.
look at a 3 to 5 year period only. So consider 5 to 7% for liquid funds. Gilt funds I have given returns in the range of 8 to 11% or 8 to 10%. And gilt funds, even though they invest in government securities, the returns are higher because they invest in very long-term government securities. So the longer term it is, the higher rate of interest it will carry.
So are they liquid even after that?
Yeah, the government will never default on its interest payments or this thing. No?
Why I ask about the liquid term is that, say I invested in that, and can I take out all of my money?
You can take out. You can take out. I'll tell you if you want. We can discuss this why. Because gilt funds also trade their bonds. Unlike liquid funds that wait for the bond redemption after 90 days, gilt funds actually trade bonds.
Okay, so if a newer one is there, you can trade the old one for the new one. Is that what you're saying?
Not you, but a fund manager.
That's what I was saying. The fund manager can
Yeah.
take up new bond and give out the old bond back to the
Right.
government.
So let's say a fund manager is managing 1,000 crores of rupee, and suddenly there comes a withdrawal request of 100 crores of rupees. The fund manager can immediately sell those many bonds in the market and take the money and give you the money back.
So it's like shares, but just for
It's like
government.
shares. So gilt fund bonds are traded in the market. And corporate debt funds have given somewhere between 10 to 14%, depending on fund house and everything. But with, of course, more risk. So that is the rough outline of how they have performed in the past. Might not be indicative of what the future will be, but yeah.
So how normally liquid debt funds go are they are not solely each of these. They are a combination of both a 91-day treasury bill or commercial paper or government bonds, right? They are not vanilla bonds of like only corporate bonds, because that would, in case of a default, the bond would entirely collapse. So they're a healthy mix, and you have to choose which portion you want more depending on the returns and depending on the fund manager's risk appetite. Like, let's not go into that selection of mutual fund bonds. So let's discuss about the taxation benefit that TV mentioned in the starting. So why we are suggesting about the liquid funds is that there are two major important benefits that a liquid fund gives over FD.
Or any debt fund.
Exactly, any debt fund gives over FD. Like, so the biggest advantage I feel is the liquidity that we mentioned. You can take out money from your liquid fund bonds in a day, as opposed to FD, where you have to wait till maturity, right? Or you have to forgo everything. Any cost that you have to give if you take it out prematurely?
No, just the longer. There's a short-term capital gain. That's it. Short-term capital gain tax. That's it.
The tax certificate.
Okay. So what's that tax? Like, how does that work?
Short-term capital gain tax is 30%, which is or 30% or whatever your income bracket is. If you're in income bracket of 20%, you'll be 20%. So short-term capital gain tax is if you withdraw money in a 3 year time period. If you withdraw money before the completion of 3 years from your investment date. If you withdraw money after a 3 year period, you pay a long-term capital gain tax, which is 20%.
Okay, and what if, say, my investments are on a monthly basis, right? My first investment has been has had 3 years to mature, and after that all my investments are below 3-year period. So I would have to pay short-term capital gains on my subsequent investments. And
Yeah. So it will be done proportionally. Whichever portion of money falls in the 3-year plus bracket, you will pay long-term capital gain.
Just a question: isn't it 1 year for short term?
No, it's 3 years.
3 years.
So Narang just had an epiphany. That shit, I had the wrong idea. It was 1 year. It is not.
Wait. So, 1 year में tax is different, क्या?
No. Till the first 3 years is the same tax depending on your income bracket.
So the advantage is that there are a couple of disadvantages of FD. Say example, you have a FD, and say your interest has become over 10,000. So on top of all the taxes, say you are in 30% bracket. So on top of that 30% extra tax on the interest, you have to pay an additional TDS of 10%, right? So that's a tax over tax that you have to pay if your interest income is above 10,000.
No, I think TDS gets adjusted. Na net you will pay only 30%.
No, so there is a surcharge over 30% if you have a interest income of over 10,000.
No, I'm not sure. I think net you will pay 30% tax only, or whatever the income bracket is.
Above 10,000, whatever your interest.
Right.
Okay,
TDS is deducted in advance that you can adjust for while filing your income tax returns. So, but I think on a net basis, you will end up paying only 30%.
30% on any interest that's above 10,000, right?
Right. So we'll
above
assume
10,000 interest income is tax free.
Right.
And above that you have to pay. And
Right.
in case of your liquid funds, you have to pay, if you are applicable for long-term capital gains, you have to pay only 20%, right?
Right. So let's compare a 5-year period. Let's say you invest money for 5 years in a 5-year FD versus in a liquid fund or a debt fund for 5 years. So in case of FD, after 5 years, when you withdraw all your money, you will pay tax as per your income bracket. If it is 30%, you pay full 30% tax on it.
And it's both the interest income as well as the principal, right?
Wait, now I'm confused slightly. Ek minute ruk.
Narang, can you help on that?
I'm so confused.
The interest income only, na? Why would you pay on the principal?
The principal, though, you already paid, na? So whatever gain you made after that. So
income is interest income, na?
Principal would be,
so for
let's
example,
say,
100 becomes 150, so you will pay tax on the 50, right?
50 rupees, correct.
Interest, though, that you won't pay double tax on that. Because you already invested that, you already got that after tax reduction, and you invested that amount.
Right. So you will end up paying, so assuming you are in the 30% tax bracket, you will end up paying 30% tax, which means if your FD was giving you, let's say, a 6% return, 30% of that.
Let's take simpler numbers. Let's say our 100 rupees became 150 in 5 years, right?
Right. So आपको उस पे 15 rupees tax pay करना पड़ेगा.
Yes.
So you get 135 rupees. Right. So just to give you a comparison in percentages, तो मैं वही कहता अगर आप let's say to take simpler numbers, if you were getting a 10% rate of return on FD and आप 30% tax pay कर देते हो उस पे, you end up with a 7% return.
Yes.
Basically. Versus if you
currently your interest rate is 5%, right?
Right.
And if you compare that, you are getting only 2% on all the money that you kept locked up for 5 years.
2% कैसे? 5% पे आप 30% tax pay करें, that's 1.5%.
No, not
3.5%.
Yeah.
3.5%.
Yes. So you are paying 3.5%, and it's being advertised as 5%, right? So that's a misleading communication that's being sent out by every party, even government, banks, everyone.
Right. Versus in a debt fund, after 5 years, no matter what your income bracket is, you will pay 20% long-term capital gains tax. That is the 10% savings you have done right away.
Yes. On all the money, that interest income that you gained, right?
Yes, exactly. Assuming that the debt fund is paying you at least as much as what the FD is paying you, which will happen in most cases.
Like more than 90% cases, it will
happen.
An FD.
Yeah. So that is 1/7. Yeah, go on, Utkarsh, about the second.
So second benefit. And the more important part that we were discussing, we mentioned a bit on our NPS discussion as well. it's the indexation benefit that you get. So what indexation is? So it's indexing your purchasing price. Say for example, in our example, if you bought a liquid fund of 100 rupees, you are indexing that 100 against uh, the interest rate. For example, it's say for 5 years, inflation rate, my bad, the inflation rate, so that the 100 gets adjusted. For example, for after 5 years, there has been a, after adjusting, your purchase rate become from 100 becomes 120. So you will have to pay interest tax on only the remaining difference, 150 minus 120. That's the 30 rupees instead of the 50 that you had to pay in case of FD. I think I complicated myself. So what I was trying to say was that your initial investment gets changed based on the inflation. As inflation increases, the value of your initial investment also increases to decrease the potential profit that you have earned. And if your potential profit has decreased, the amount of tax that you have to pay would decrease going forward.
No, so correct, perfectly told. I'll explain this in another manner. Okay, so like you said, your potential profit will decrease. Nothing is decreasing anywhere. Just so people don't get freaked out, you will still get the same amount of money back. Okay, but what is happening here is that inflation actually affects people, but they don't realize it. Okay, what this indexation technique gives us an advantage is that, as let's say after 5 years, over the 5 year period, inflation कुछ रहा होगा 5% 6% रहा होगा अपने कंट्री में, वो इन्फ्लेशन से आप अपना कॉस्ट प्राइस एडजस्ट कर सकते हो ऑफिशियली ऑन पेपर. दैट्स इट. आपने वही 100 रुपए इन्वेस्ट किए, आपको वही 150 रुपीज वापस मिले हैं, बट ऑन पेपर फॉर टैक्सेशन पर्पस यू कैन इंक्रीज योर कॉस्ट फ्रॉम 100 टू लेट्स से 120. आपने 120 रुपीज पे नहीं किया, आपने 100 रुपीज ही पे किया है. बट व्हाट दिस इंडेक्सेशन, it's an accounting practice. Correct. It's just everything was on paper. उससे फायदा क्या हुआ कि आप ऑन पेपर प्रॉफिट कम दिखा रहे हो. आपको प्रॉफिट अभी 50 रुपए का ही हुआ है, बट आप उसको 30 रुपीज दिखा रहे हो प्रॉफिट. उससे फायदा क्या हुआ, अब आप टैक्स, you are paying tax on a smaller base value.
So in short, you are paying 20% on just 30 rupees instead of
correct on 50 rupees. Perfect. हाँ, तो आपका डबल बेनिफिट यहाँ पे हो गया, आपका टैक्स रेट कम हो गया, आपका बेस प्राइस कम हो गया जिसपे आप टैक्स भर रहे हो.
So in this example, instead of paying 15 rupees, you are just paying now 6 rupees of tax.
Wow, that's a lot of saving.
और 50 रुपया कट ओवर एक्टिंग के वजह.
I mean, हाँ, लोगों को लग नहीं रहा होगा कि ये कितना significant number है, but if you look at large sums of
percentage terms only, you can see it as a lot.
हाँ, right. So वही large sums of money over a long period of time, you will realize कितना सारा money we lose in just unnecessary frictions like tax.
Yes. So like the base problem here is that people don't realize the long-term capital gains and indexation benefits. Even if some people are invested in that, they are losing out on this. They are not finding them in their income taxes, and that's why if they're not being and that's where your CA comes in, right? If they're able to identify this technique and they're able to generate additional opportunities, that people say that my CA was able to save me 1 lakh rupees. How was he able to do that? He was able to identify you already had these debt instruments, and you can claim for indexation. You can claim for long-term capital gain tax, like savings, which you would have earlier done. That's the main advantage. It helps not only index your initial purchase price to the current level, it also helps in reduction of taxes. So, and just a point to note, all the discussions that we had been doing were for people who are in 30% bracket, right? For example, people who are in lower bracket, for example, at 10%, 20%, would have to pay lower taxes in FD segment. The LTCG is same.
Right.
Yeah.
LTCG is same as 20%. So that's a very good point. If somebody is in a lower tax
bracket,
FD will be a better investment for him because uska income tax rate will be lower.
I don't think it would be better. It would still, I think, the gain would be lesser in debt because you're still paying 20% in FD.
So then they would have to do calculation where the taxes are coming.
Yeah, I think then it depends on like the quantum, but
the major
Yeah.
advantage that liquid fund holds over FD is still the liquidity, right? That's in the name, because in FD you lose everything if you withdraw before the maturity. So
Yeah,
even though the returns are same, liquid funds still give you the major flexibility of taking out money in 24 hours. Then that's as similar as having money in savings account, but with higher interest rate. So
right,
benefit
right.
having FD level interest rate in your savings account.
So just you won't lose everything. You will pay a penalty on that.
Yeah,
So
Huh.
exactly.
it's not that you lose all interest gained, but you might pay a penalty of 1% if or something like that. Yeah.
So
Huh. Right.
that 1% has to be paid in case of debt fund as well. In if you are taking out the money before the lock-in period. For example, say a debt fund has 1 year of lock-in period, and if you
नहीं, डेट फंड्स के लॉक इन पीरियड नहीं होते हैं शायद.
no, it's not lock-in period. It's called
तो
maintenance.
नहीं नहीं, एग्जिट लोड होता है.
Exit load. That
हाँ,
what I was getting at.
exit load लगता है for the first 1 year,
Yes.
but that is also proportional. So if you are investing every month,
Mhm.
the exit load for each month will be on a different date.
Yeah.
तो जैसे जो the doubt you asked earlier, similar way में काम करेगा ये भी.
So I just when you mentioned that FD would have, this is a similar thing that will happen in liquid fund as well. So like when we are comparing, we have to give equal weightage to both of them. Like it's not like liquid fund are better than FD in every case. Say someone is not following in any tax bracket, then FD is straight out better for them and for tax purposes, right? Because they don't have to pay any interest on their savings. For example, if their total interest income comes down below 10,000, then the tax is zero again for FD, right? So, for example, any benefit, for example, we calculated the tax rate as 50 rupees gain at 30%. We should have reduced the 10,000 bracket that we had for the initial money that we had, right? So they won't have to pay interest on the entire 50 rupees. Some out of it would be reduced as non-taxed interest.
Yeah.
Also, exit loads are not there on all the funds. It depends on the fund manager, fund house, and everything. So that you guys can check before selecting the fund you are investing in. You can also compare exit loads. You can also compare if there is any other fees that the fund is charging.
Fund manager fees is there always.
Huh.
Like,
It's usually lower in debt funds. Equity funds it's higher because equity funds require more skill to generate returns. So it's lower in debt funds, but still it's always a better idea to compare first and then go and pick your fund that you want to invest in.
so I think we've covered everything, right?
I think we haven't covered like how to actually select what type of debt
I was
fund.
just saying that should we go into how to select a fund or
Yeah, I think we should.
will that be a very long discussion?
Or
I
maybe
think,
in short,
yeah, we can
let's
quickly.
give 5-10 minutes to that.
Okay, so I'll just recommend one website. It's called valueresearchonline.com.
Mhm.
It's one of the best websites to compare mutual funds. So it won't tell you which is good, which is bad. It will at least help you. It will give you all the data you require for a mutual fund or to compare mutual funds, all the fees, the size of a mutual fund, and everything. So you guys, let's tell what each of us use as factors while selecting a mutual fund. That should keep it short and crisp, right? So, Utkarsh, you want to start? Like, if you are selecting a debt fund, what will you look at before
So
investing into the fund?
I think I would be the best person to start because I personally don't do much research on that. So what I do is that first of all, I go to the various platforms, right? There's money control. You search for which is the best performing debt fund there. Then I personally use Coin by Zerodha, and there is also a listing of a lot of funds there in the order of their returns, right? Return is one of the most lucrative thing that you obviously look for. But so earlier I just used to look at the highest return mutual fund. Apart from the exit load as well as the fund fees, these two are also important. But I mainly looked at which fund provided the highest rate of return, and I used to go for that. But the next fund that I am going to look for example, if I'm looking for a liquid fund, I'll look at what kind of securities are they investing in. Because if I am to go for higher returns, I would go for equity mutual funds, right? For where I'm coming for debt funds, I'm coming for security. I want 30% of my money or whatever share I have allocated to debt. I want that to be in a secure bank. That's why I would look for something that has a higher ratio of treasury bills or higher ratio of government securities to make sure that that part of my money is locked up, that's safe. And if I want higher returns, I can switch to equity investments anyways, right? Debt funds are not supposed to be for wealth creation.
Yeah.
They are supposed to be for safety, security, some money that's always available to you for emergencies.
Right.
So that's my entire thought process. I believe you two would be able to give more refined answer on that.
No, so I think TB might, because I haven't dabbled in debt mutuals as much as him. But I think one more thing I look at is AUM.
Correct.
Because when I was starting out, so that was one of the things. Even when I researched that, if usually if a fund has a sufficient or a decent AUM, I would consider it as a more safer investment.
What is
But
AUM? Technical term. थोड़ा explain कर दे.
AUM is basically full form is assets under management. Basically, the total market value of all the investments that you have made.
The amount of money the fund manager is managing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's, you can take a one-to-one comparison as a share price, for example. Say it's the share price of that mutual fund. So the AM value will keep on increasing and decreasing, and
No,
that will affect.
no, that's
No,
NAV.
no, that is NAV. AUM is the
That's
total
NAV.
value of all the investments. So that is the total portfolio size. I think that's
Hmm.
a better comparison.
Hmm.
So usually, though, this more secure funds that I'm looking at, which they have a decently high AUM.
Mhm.
So that was another factor I was, using to filter the investments.
Hmm.
I think TV would probably have more criterion.
Yeah, I mean, AUM is a very good criteria. The bigger the fund size is, the more responsible you can assume the fund manager is. And since all of us are small retail investors, so whenever you want to withdraw any money, the fund, in most cases, will not have an issue giving the money back if the AUM is large, because it's a lot of money the fund is managing. He can easily manage to pay back a 1 or 2 CR of money. Or even if somebody is managing 10,000 crores of money and you go and withdraw 5 crores out of it, it doesn't matter to the fund manager. He can arrange the money easily. Versus a fund which is managing 100 crores of rupees and you go and withdraw 5 crores out of it, that fund manager will have an issue.
So I have a question here, TB. Do
Huh.
you regularly withdraw 1 or 2 crore of money?
I'm assuming I will after 30
Yeah.
years. So right, so AUM is that. Second is I also look for funds being run by big fund houses, and let's say HDFC, ICICI, because mutual funds are also run by private companies. If you see their mutual funds by Indiabulls, by Aditya Birla, I personally don't trust these guys because they are not big enough yet.
I think
And
Indiabulls and Aditya Birla in the same basket, but
probably. I mean, they could be right, they could be wrong. We don't know. But I would be more comfortable keeping my money with an HDFC or an ICICI mutual fund or an SBI mutual fund, because they are managing so much money that if something bad were to happen, the government will have to intervene. The government will never let that much money go down the drain.
And in
basically
that,
too big to fail.
Correct. Too big to
exactly.
fail.
And there is another thought behind that as well, right? They are an extended arm of SBI or Kotak or HDFC, right? So in that case, the parent company would be able to help out its business if
Right.
if there was some problem in the mutual fund business, right?
And other than this, my another criteria is if is basically fund managers who are quite active on social media and in general and into investor education. So two fund houses I really love in this sense is Parag Parekh and DSP. Their fund managers are very, very active. They keep telling about their philosophies. They keep telling about their research, about, so they kind of instill confidence into their investors by keeping it very, very open and transparent as to what they are doing, why they are doing it, what is the logic behind it, what are they expecting out of it.
So it's
So that is again a personal choice. Might not be okay for everybody, but I feel comfortable if I know why my fund manager is doing something, what he's doing. So these are two major criteria that I follow while selecting fund houses or mutual funds.
that's a very good point. Even like that's a very high level thought that you are saying, right? Even say in customer care, a customer, say if you had a certain problem, you complained say regarding your AMC, right? And it was not attended for 6 months, and finally they did it, right? But for the entire 6 months, if you do not have information that what they are doing on the back end, you might think that they are just chilling, right? They're doing nothing. They might have been working hard every day on that, and the problem got resolved 6 months down the line. Compare that to a company who keeps you in the loop, keeps you informed that what is the problem, how we are trying to resolve that. So that helps you in keeping the customer happy and keeping the customer content that this company is doing something for me. Versus the company that also did it, right? But you are not aware of the entire process, right? You might lose confidence in them. So when you have that line of communication with the fund manager, you have a confidence that this was something that I agreed with along the process.
Correct. At least the thought process is same, at least the risk profiling is same, and all those things. So not a recommendation, but I would recommend to follow these guys, not to invest in these guys. Start following them first, just to understand how they think, what they think. The most active mutual fund managers on social media are DSP's Kalpen Parekh. He's the chief fund manager of DSP.
We'll provide the links, I think, below.
We will. Right. Then Parag Parikh's Rajiv Thakkar and Ronak Omkar. And Edelweiss's Mrs. Radhika Gupta, I think her name is. So these guys are quite active in investor education informally on a social media platform. So which helps to understand their philosophy, and so in that case, even if the fund might underperform for some time, I will still be comfortable, because I know, and they would have informed me why it is happening and why, what are they expecting out of it and everything. So
I think we have covered, I think, most of the major things.
Let's not keep the first podcast for too long. I think we can close it out here. We have covered most of the topics, I believe.
They are very amateur, as you can already. So if any improvements, if any in terms of visuals you want, that we
any
can,
kind of feedback, basically.
Any other feedback would be appreciated. And I mean, we'll constantly try and improve upon our content, but we hope that this first attempt has been fruitful.
And if there are a lot of doubts, we can just keep posting them. If there is a very long list of doubts, we can maybe do a session where we just clear those doubts, or else we'll try to clear them in the comments itself. Utkarsh, you were saying something.
So I was saying that in case of any doubts, we can cover them during the end of the podcast. Like, for example, as a question, we can take them. And like, for example, any closing thoughts on the discussion that we had overall, where we're discussing FD versus liquid mutual funds. Like, anything you would like to say as to summarize, so that who were not able to follow throughout the entire session, but want to take the final takeaway in that sense.
Okay, my summary would be that all of us have grown up knowing what an FD, what an RD is, but we are not very aware of what mutual funds are, especially debt mutual funds. If you go back in this video, you would have seen us explain why those funds are much, much better than FD and RD in terms of returns and liquidity both, and even in safety. So come out of that mindset of investing only in FDs and RDs. Start exploring into mutual funds, especially debt mutual funds, and it's very simple to earn some extra money here and there. We just need to be conscious and aware of where we are losing on opportunities where we can earn some extra income, which compounds to a very, very large number over a very, very long term. So that's my takeaway from it. Aman.
I think Proteria is covered. I think it's just important. So Indians in general, when you're starting out, you try to become a very safe investor. So we are just trying to make you a more smarter investor in terms of your savings that you do. So FD, as everyone knows, has been aware, our parents used to invest in it. We have also done it, but we're just trying to make you understand there are other better alternatives out there which are almost as secure and which have much greater benefits. So it's just important to be a smart investor, not just a safe investor.
Correct.
I believe that what's lacking in current education system is the financial education part.
Yeah.
For example, even when somebody goes for mutual funds, they are only exposed to the equity mutual funds, right? Debt mutual funds are hidden behind the equity mutual funds. Even the fund houses like to advertise their equity part, right? Because you would like to see 20% return, right? Like last year, Edelweiss gave 20% return on their mutual funds, and that's something that they lure you with, right? That's a good proposition. I'm not denying that, but what I'm saying is that these are the instruments for the people who would like to play it safe. And the thing is that wealth generation is an iterative process. For example, saving, you would say, what good it does shaving 10 points on my taxes, right? And what good does it do having 2 extra
Yeah.
percentage of return? But when that gets compounded over 30 years, the difference would be in crores. And I'm not joking here. Even an investment of 50,000 per year would have a difference in crores 30 years down the line. If you are saving much more than that, then difference would be huge. And the numbers won't seem that large in later context because of inflation that we already discussed in the video. But the thing is, everything adds up. Each point of tax that you saved, each additional interest that you got through the entire process is helpful. Like that was what I wanted to relay in the entire session.
Yeah. Let's see how it
Bye,
goes,
guys.
and we'll be back with the more sessions if the response is good. So please ensure you guys give a good response.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be back with more sessions, irrespective of the response, but we hope we
It
at
was
least
fun for
tried
us.
for a few sessions. But yeah, but we hope, yeah, you guys were able to derive some benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and tune in for more videos from the Mythbusters. अरे कोई आ गया